Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. It is indeed a What the Frig Friday edition of Middays with Q on this June 6, 2025. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. 2 hours to play with. We have a very busy show. As always, get in on the conversation, bring something to the table, as we like to say. Costco is going to join us right around 5:05. We'll talk a little college football with him. We will definitely get into some baseball on this Friday. Certainly, we will dive into the NFL as we've kind of carried over the conversation over the last several days. Obviously, yesterday, the big news of the day, Aaron Rodgers inking that one-year contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we'll see if it's kind of changed the sports betting or the gambling outlook if you are an NFL fan. You got the Belmont this weekend as well. And then you got the NBA Finals. And I got to tell you, I'm watching. Look, you watch these playoffs and you watch how the Pacers they won't go away. They just refuse to go away. And I'm thinking to myself, is this, if they go on to win the NBA championship, now granted, I still believe it could be a gentleman's sweep. I think OKC just kind of stubbed their toe last night. But if the Indiana Pacers go on to win the NBA Finals, is it one of the more unlikeliest runs we've seen in recent sports memory? I mean, think about that for a moment. It's not like they have 5 or 6 players that are household names on their roster. You know it, and I know it. Siakam, Haliburton, and then you guys, if you don't really follow the game, you kind of insert player. Or is this fairy tale going to eventually come to an end? And as I alluded to, is it going to be that gentleman's sweep? I mean, last night, you saw a team that they don't have any quit in them. They have no quit. And Tyrese Haliburton is turning into, a clutch player. I mean, he's almost turning into like a Robert Ory type of player where he's clutch all the time. He's like, big shot Bob, big shot Tyrese, there goes that man again. I mean, he's a better player, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to compare the two. I mean, Robert Ory was making big shots over and over and over throughout the course of his career. Big shot Bob. Big shot Bob. Always. Anytime the game was on the line, Robert Ory was making big time shots. And last night, it's Haliburton again. And it's the Indiana Pacers who were left for dead. I just don't get it. They won't die. They're down double digits in the fourth. And they just keep scratching and clawing and Turner with a 3. And, all of a sudden, Siakam, ripping down rebounds. McConnell with a couple buckets. Haliburton, here we go. And then you get possession late off the SGA miss. And boom, Indiana just plays it out. What was it, a 13-footer? Nothing but net. 111, 110. I mean, all they do is just come back from the dead. That's all they do. Like, you think you've dug the hole. You think you've put the lime in and you're getting ready to just dispose of the body, and the Pacers just show you a little life. They start breathing and kicking when you're pulling them out of the back seat, the trunk of the car. You're like, oh, what the hell? We didn't finish them off. That's who they are. That's who they are. I believe we are witnessing what could be one of those, wow, how about that run? Now, you know me. I picked OKC, and I think I said it was 5 because I said the gentleman's sweep. And that could still play out. But this kid is clutch. I mean, it's the thing with Haliburton is he can put up the most miserable, disgusting stat line. It can be such a gaudy, just a brutal, oh my God, he just shot 6 of 18. He's got 7 turnovers. He's not getting to the charity stripe. He looks clueless. He looks lost. And it doesn't matter because that 47th minute plus, a little bit of change in the game, he's going to turn around and he's going to break your heart. This kid's shooting 86%, 13 of 15 on game tying or go ahead field goals. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. He can have ugly, nasty, get it out of my face stats with that ugly looking shot. Last night, 6 of 13, 2 of 7 from beyond the arc, 14 points. But the 14th point was the biggest. And he had 3 turnovers. And if you're OKC, you got to realize, man, you just can't show up at the dance. You got to get your ass on the floor. I mean, Indiana's not going anywhere. SGA was a monster last night. He gave you those MVP numbers. And I'm not, again, all this nonsense, face of the NBA. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. Let it play out. Let it play out first. That's number one. But they are going on a run. And you talk about just unlikely runs. Now, I also heard, the flip side to that. Well, if they go on to lose, no one's going to remember Haliburton's playoff run. That's not necessarily true, and that's not necessarily fair. It's not. It isn't. And I don't think that's accurate. We've seen unlikely like Toronto, to me, several years ago, that was a very unlikely run to a championship. I don't think anyone penciled in, Kawhi Leonard, Siakam, Fred VanVleet to Toronto. Here we go. I think that was an unlikely sports run. We've seen it in hockey. We've seen it in baseball. We've certainly seen it in the NFL, have we not? Now, it's a long series. There's a long way to go for this series. But last night, they just won't relent. They just won't quit. And there's a gene. There's a something innate in this kid where it doesn't matter if he's struggling. If he gets the ball late, chances are you're going to win it. You're talking about a 15-point deficit late. And I'm listening to the game on the radio, and I'm watching the game too because I like PJ Carlesimo. I think he's a very good analyst. And he said, quote, I don't like to use the term stole a game, but the Indiana Pacers stole a game tonight. And he is 100% accurate. 4 game-winning or game-tying shots in the final seconds of games this postseason. And he's done it in every round in the postseason. Since 1997, Haliburton's 5 go-ahead or game-tying shots in the final 5 seconds of games are tied with Pacers legend Reggie Miller and trailing only Laker star LeBron James. That was according to NBA TV. So slice and dice it all you want. The kid's clutch, and they had the pace where they needed the pace to be. They had the pace where they needed the pace to be. And OKC, you're kicking yourself, man. You're kicking yourself. You don't want to give a team like this life. You don't want to give this team life because they're not going anywhere. That's the problem. Also, if you think about it from this standpoint, we always talk about having those clean games. Well, this is a staggering stat. If I told you Indiana turned the ball over 24 times last night and OKC only turned it over 6 times. 6 times in an NBA game. And 4 of them were Jalen Williams, who finished with 17, but he was minus on the floor. You would say, Q, OKC probably won the game by double digits. Nope, not at all. Gilchrist, Alexander, SGA only got to the line 8 times. He started to pick it up a little bit in the fourth. 14 of 30 for 38. Williams with 17. Dort with 15. They got some production off the bench. But again, it was the pace of Indiana. It was the scratching, the clawing, and it was also knocking down some big-time three-pointers as well. They shot 47%, 48% from beyond the arc. And now, boom, here you go. You got yourself a series. Man chimes in, watching out for justice. Classic. Steven Seagal. I mean, how do you know, anybody seen Richie? Who killed Bobby Lupo, right? You a boxing guy? Yeah, that's right. You a tough guy? Yeah, that's right. Is this all your boxing memorabilia? Um, absolutely. Like the pigeon. Oh, Bunker Boys won't like that in 2017. Yeah, that was an unlikely run by the Philadelphia Eagles. It was. Their whole season turned on Elliott's 61-yarder against the Giants, where to this day I still believe there was no time left on the game clock. But you're playing in Philly, and the clock operator. Here we go. And yeah, I mean, if Indiana goes up 2-0 again, I mean, do you sit there and say, okay, is Indiana going to figure out a way to close it out? Is Indiana going to have a little, the hiccup like they've done in series past when we think the series is over and they've blown a couple games? Look, you're up. You steal game one in an NBA Finals, which sucked the life out of that arena last night. Sucked the life out of the arena. But, to me, this kid now is starting. You're talking about postseason, right? Postseason clutch performers. I'm not talking about, look, Vinny Johnson was instant offense. He was a great player in the postseason when he needed to be for the Pistons. Robert Horry, great player in the clutch when he needed to be. Um, I'm talking about is Haliburton, if he continues this trend, Ray Allen had big shots. But if Haliburton continues this trend, are we, I'm not comparing him, but statistically, crunch performance wise, you have to start to sit there and put this kid in the category of a MJ and LeBron James. Now, again, pump the brakes. I'm not comparing this kid to those great players. What I'm saying is postseason, he is starting to become Mr. Clutch, right? Reggie Miller was clutch. Bird was clutch. Parrish was clutch. DJ was clutch. We've seen, Kerr hit big shots in his career. Stockton hit big shots in his career, postseason wise. And then you got Michael, you got LeBron, you got Isaiah. Those guys were clutch. Magic Johnson. But if you just go and you just look at these numbers and these odds and the chances that they have to win these games late, they are left for dead. And this kid refuses to wilt. It's unheard of. It's unheard of to be that bad or that average for the majority of the game. 1998, Michael Jordan was just on another level. It's you have to take those numbers and put them in context, right? Because that Bulls team was on their last leg. They were. Scottie Pippen was injured. Dennis Rodman was washed. Everyone knew they were about to break up. And Jordan dragged them to a championship. He dragged them 76 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 steals, 3 blocks for a Bulls team that went, quote, 8-6 in the clutch. So you have to put it in context. 2007, LeBron James didn't win a championship. But think about that team LeBron James took. He dragged a bunch of nobodies. That team was horrible. He dragged a bunch of nobodies into the finals. And look, they got routed. But man, his numbers that year were just off the chart. They were just off the chart. You're talking about as clutch as you can be as a player. As a player, D chiming in, North Castle. Q, excellent conversation. I'm not going to put Haliburton in that category just yet, but there's something about this kid, as you alluded to. I don't know how he gets it done. Listen, clutch is clutch. Clutch is clutch. If you figure out a way to get it done, I don't care what your stats are. I don't. I really don't. That's the beauty of sports. This roster, look at this roster. This is 2007. 2007. You guys remember this roster. They got swept in the finals by San Antonio. But look at these players, the list of players. Remember Booby Gibson, Drew Gordon, Larry Hughes, Ilzaxis, remember him? Zagunis Ilzaxis. Who else? LeBron James, Damon Jones, Dwayne Jones, Danielle Marshall, Scott Pollard, Eric Snow's on that squad. I mean, he just dragged them and said, "Come on, let's go, let's go." 2011, that Mavericks team, Dirk. I mean, you're talking about as clutch as a player could be. They won 11-5 against opponents that included Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, LeBron James, and Dwayne Wade. You're talking about all-time great. I gave you guys that are Hall of Fame players. Hall of Fame players. Seriously. Did I butcher it? How do you butcher it? Hawanaska? Zagunis Lagaskis? Lagaskis Zagunis? Hold on, I got to double check that. Ayahuasca, because a couple guys on Twitter are laughing too. I crushed his name. Zidrunis Ilgaskis. What did I say? Ayahuasca, 17 past a 17 past the 4 o'clock hour. Somewhere Russo's probably laughing. 17 past the 4 o'clock hour, cranking up on a What the Frig Friday edition of Middays with Q, powered by good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Trix 57, and of course, played again sports. Ilgunis, I keep messing it up. Zidrunis Ilgaskis, right? To Big Z. What did I got in reverse, didn't I? What do we got here? Maddie in Wilmington. Q, I am laughing my ass off right now. I got you listening on your YouTube channel. I'm driving. I got to be careful here. You have no idea how to pronounce names, do you? And you do this for a living. Ha ha ha. Enjoying the NBA talk. Yeah, you're talking about all-time greats. I'm not going to put Haliburton in that category just yet. But to your point, this kid has a clutch gene that we haven't seen in a long time. We haven't. We haven't. And that's why I love watching these games. And when you get to the playoffs and you get to the finals and you get to these types of opportunities, because sometimes, or more times than not, guys that you don't expect to be the man, they figure out a way to step up and be the man. You know about his numbers when he's on, but when he's struggling and he still has the capability to knock down the shot, that's what's impressive. All right, 18 past 4 o'clock hour, cranking it up on a Friday. A lot of comments coming in. We'll read them off. We'll take you up to 6 o'clock. Costco around 5:05 on college football. I have a couple of, I guess you can say, percentage-wise questions with some of these conferences I want to get with Costco. Also, his thoughts on UNC and Belichick, and if he actually believes Colorado is going to go bowling this coming season. So don't forget, you can get in on the conversation Facebook, YouTube channel, and of course on X. Keep it locked in. We'll take you up to 6 o'clock straight up. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let me get to some of these comments. I'm glad you guys love when I butcher said names. 21 past 4 o'clock hour. Rich Quinones here. What the frig? Version of Friday version of Middays with Q. I'm your host as always. Don't forget BYP 20% off your first purchase of fresh roasted coffee. Yeah, I don't know why. Listen, I don't know. Bing bang boom. I don't know. I don't know. I got to be careful with the music now. I think it got flagged. I'm being totally honest. I'm being totally honest, man. I think we got flagged with the music. I wanted to go bing bang boom boom time, but nothing. I couldn't do it. I mean, I can bring it up for a second. It's almost like that 10 seconds. And then all of a sudden they start to talk about the licensing crap. Not a fan of it. Where we go? Did we go with the slow hip hop or was it this? Hold on. Let's see. We'll take a request. No, that's Angels. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just listen, do not shoot the messenger. We've got to abide. I can only get away with so much. There's that line, and you guys know I am willing to go past that line. And most of the time, up to that line. Up to that line. I don't know what to tell you. What do we got here? G in South Philly chiming in. Q, how about Kobe Bryant? You left him off the list. What about Dr. J, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? List goes on and on and on. Hold on. Now you guys are taking it down the rabbit hole. This is what you guys are doing. Just what you guys are doing. You're taking it down the rabbit hole. I'm talking about isolated moments. Isolated moments. Now we're not going to have this conversation of all of a sudden clutch players that we know, or you're talking all-time greats. I'm not putting Haliburton in that category. What I'm saying is this kid has an uncanny act, an uncanny ability to just drop the shot late, come through in the clutch late. And I can't recall watching a player have a run like this. Like Robert Horry, by definition, Robert Horry, who's lived a charmed life. I mean, big shot Rob. You're talking about he's one of 4 NBA players to win championships with 3 teams. He won 2 with the Rockets, 3 with the Lakers, 2 with the Spurs. That's ridiculous. And he was a hell of a defensive player too. I mean, he holds the NBA record for most steals in a finals game and most three-point shots made. He made his life knock every time with that. And he had that awkward shot too. He kind of pull it back and then release it, kind of flip it. That was just not the Marino, but kind of flip it, right? So he had an awkward shot as well. But everywhere he went, he just had big shots. You go back to the Western Conference semifinals, Game 7, 1993. Go back to Western Conference Finals, Game 1, 1995. Go to the NBA Finals, Game 3, 1995. Go to 2002, Western Conference Finals, Game 4. Go to 2005, NBA Finals, Game 5. It just never ends with this dude. It never. And Robert Horry, I mean, look, I think he might have averaged 10 points in his career once or twice. No one's going to sit there and say Robert Horry's a Hall of Famer, but he's in the Hall of Fame when it comes to big shots and being clutch. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen NHL goalies stand on their head. We've seen NHL, goalies go on runs. We've seen NFL quarterbacks go on runs. We've seen it with sluggers get hot and they're locked in. When the Yanks beat the Phillies, Alex Rodriguez was locked in. He was clutch in that postseason. Carlos Beltran, the year that he got traded. Remember, it was what? With the Royals and the Astros, he was clutch that postseason. Manny Ramirez, clutch in a lot of runs. But I'm also giving you guys that were just on a different stratosphere. I'm saying right now, what you're seeing and what you're witnessing from Tyrese Haliburton, whether you like the kid or not, whether you like, his shot, whether you like his game, if it's not aesthetically pleasing on the eyeballs, you have to just acknowledge when the game's on the line and Indiana is down by 1 or the score is tied or they need a 2 or they need a 3, they got an opportunity to win a game. As a defender, as the opposition, I don't want this kid anywhere near the basketball. If I'm a Pacers fan, I'm living and dying by this kid, and I'm okay if he misses once. I'm okay if he misses once because that's how good this kid has been. And I still believe it's going to be a short series. I really do. I think you're going to get that gentleman's sweep. And I was texting my buddy this last night. This reminded me, if you remember 1991, the Bulls, they played the Lakers, and the Lakers were aging. I thought Portland was better than the Lakers that year, and that's when Magic had the steal and he flipped it, down the floor, and they won that series in 6. So the Bulls that grew up that postseason, this was their first trip to the NBA Finals. And if you remember that very first game on the road, if you remember, the Lakers beat the Bulls late, and it was a Sam Perkins three-pointer, and they won 93-91. And everyone said, oh my God, I can't believe this. I can't, the Lakers, man, you can't count these guys out. You can't count them out. That's a veteran team. They know how to win. They got a mixed bag. And then what did the Bulls do? They just trounced them. They trounced them the next game. They beat them by 19, 20 points. Then they beat them by 10 the next game. Then they beat them by 16. And then they closed them out. They closed them out in Los Angeles. I kind of see us going that route. A couple guys pointed out, same thing with the Philadelphia 76ers. That Allen Iverson led team when he steps over Tyrone Lue. They win the first game. Here we go, steal the game. And then the Lakers did the gentleman's sweep. I think that's where we're at. But if Indiana makes this run, it is as improbable as they come. It is as improbable as they come. You can slice it. You can dice it. It does not matter. You can't. You can't sit there and dispute it. And the fact that they keep coming back, right? Yeah, and that's a great point. 10-point win back then was a huge victory. You're right. It was like a dominating game. Now it's nothing. Now it's like, okay, maybe you're down 15, you cut it to 10, or you're down 4 and you got a foul and you win by 10. So you have to put it in context. And I think that was the only lead of the game for Indiana last night. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a great run that this team is on, right? It is a great, great run. And I'm not going to, again, put him on that certain level just yet. My guy, Jonathan Marshall, just shot me a text. He's tuning in. Hattie's putting himself in the conversation as greatest pacer of all time if he keeps this up. Wow. I mean, listen, Reggie never won, but I don't know about that, brother. I don't know about that. I mean, Reggie Miller spent his entire career with the Pacers. And he was steady Eddie, man. Now, he didn't make a lot. The funny thing about Reggie Miller, he didn't make a lot of All-Stars, but I guess that's kind of, look who you're playing in the Eastern Conference or look who you're playing against. I think he was top 10 or 15 voting in the MVP once, but he was Mr. Playoff. He was Mr. Clutch. And that could be if they win a championship, that puts you on a different level. Like, think about this, too. Football is the perfect example. Who do you think is revered more with the Philadelphia Eagles? Nick Foles or Donovan McNabb? If you think about that for a moment, which quarterback is revered more? Donovan McNabb, that many argue is a Hall of Famer, and arguably one of the greatest Eagles quarterbacks of all time. Or you got Nick Foles, who won a championship as a backup. Nick Foles is revered more. Now, McNabb didn't spend his whole career with the Philadelphia Eagles, but he had a lot of success. Reggie Miller spent his whole career with the Indiana Pacers. He had a substantial amount of success. But push came to shove, one NBA trip to the finals, right? And they didn't win it. If Haliburton figures out, you might be onto something, Jonathan. I'm not ready to go that, have that conversation just yet, but I think the kid's clutch. I really do. I think he's a hell of a player. I'm not the biggest fan, but I think he's a hell of a player. And it's fun to watch, man. Let me get some improbable runs here. Q, how about your Giants in 2007? That was improbable. They started 0-2. They needed a fourth down stop in DC. Yep. Fourth and goal, Liddell Betts. And then they ripped off six straight. And then obviously they had their run with Eli and Plaxico and went through the undefeated Patriots. That was a very improbable run. Yes, improbable. And by the way, you need to be a little lucky when you have improbable runs. You have to. Let me see here. Let me see. Oh, Ryan in Claymont, big baseball fan and big Cardinals fan. Q, do you remember the 2011 Cardinals? You're talking about St. Louis, right? Is that where we're talking in that division, right? Um, I don't know, or you're talking about the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals had a run many years ago with Kurt Warner. Let me see. PD Boy, DT, hockey fan Q. How about the Detroit Red Wings? I wasn't around, but 42 Stanley Cup Finals, improbable, down 3-0. They came back to win against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, you're talking an isolated series. I'm talking about a run, a run, a run, a run. That's what I'm talking about. Dominant run, improbable runs. You guys know them. It's when a team comes out of nowhere. Arizona Diamondbacks a couple years ago. A team that comes out of nowhere. You get to the World Series. You don't win it, but that's an improbable run. You know, the 1980 USA Hockey, that's an improbable, that is the ultimate improbable run. You got a bunch of amateur college players shocking the world, and they beat the Soviets. That's improbable. No one saw the Pacers bursting on the scene this year, especially against a team in OKC that everyone figured, hey, you know, here's christenation, you know, the coronation, christen them, here they go. They're going to be a championship team. That's improbable. That's improbable. Now, you don't necessarily have to win it. I never thought that the 89-90 Portland Trailblazers, they had a nice little run out of Western Conference. They eventually lost to the Bad Boys. But that was an improbable run. The Knicks, my Knicks in 1999, Latrell Sprewell, DeCamby Man, Allen Houston, Childs. You know, that was an improbable run. No one expected that to happen. No one expected that to happen. And some of these teams, they don't have that makeup. You look at them and you say, man, these guys they're not that good. Like, are they that good to you? We've seen it in the NBA because the NBA is a different animal. You know, what about that Pistons teams many years ago when they had who they have? They had Rip, they had Chauncey Billups. Remember that team? That team just that Larry Brown that was an improbable run. You know, Larry Brown team, that was an improbable run with the Sixers. So what the Pacers are doing is very unique. Um, I think they have their work cut out for them the rest of the series. I really do. Sergeant Delaware chiming in Q. I think you can be very subjective with this. Everyone's opinion is going to be different. How you define improbable? We're talking about a game, comeback, series, or an entire season. Again, you're right. For argument's sake, I'm talking about an entire season and playoffs. That's all. All right, 4:35, quick timeout. Don't forget, Costco is going to join me at 5:05. Very busy weekend. Little baseball on the other side as well. You can keep the comments coming. Phillies lost again. And I might have single-handedly kiboshed behind the Death Star mic a great potential NL Cy Young award-winning pick that I had. I might have single-handedly kiboshed it. I'll tell you about it as well on the other side. Keep it locked in. We'll pick you up to 6 on a Friday. All right, 4:37 on a Friday edition Middays with Q. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Don't forget, you can follow along pretty easy on social media. You can catch me Monday to Friday from 4 to 6 on IG and on X at Rich Q on Q, on TikTok, Rich Q on the mic. And as I mentioned, Costco is going to join us in about 20. Wanted to touch base a little bit on baseball. I mentioned that I might have single-handedly kiboshed what I thought was a strong play. I mentioned to you, what was it, last week, maybe 7 days ago, to take a flyer on Jesus Luzardo, who was at plus 1,800 for NL Cy Young Award play, right? For a potential Cy Young Award winner. And this was right after he pitched well. I thought, who was it? Might have been, what was the outing? It was his last one, two, I want to say he hasn't pitched well in 3 starts. But this was right after Atlanta, and they lost, so he didn't get the decision. And I mentioned, hey, he's eating up a lot of innings. He's pitching really well. So, of course, what happens? I took a flyer for Luzardo, got the ticket. Here we go. Turn around a couple days later, he pitches against Milwaukee. He promptly goes out and he lasts just 3 1/3. He gives up 12 runs, all earned on 12 hits, not to mention a couple homers. I didn't think anything of it. All right, let me ride him again. Coming back, he's going to rebound. Toronto, here we go. The bats are going to come alive. Phillies go out. They get waxed 9-1. It happens, not the problem. Here's the issue. Luzardo, 2 1/3, 9 hits, 8 runs, all earned. And again, I don't know if it's control issues right now. I don't know if this kid's hurt. I don't know if it's psychological. But as soon as I praised him and I said, take a flyer on him, take a flyer on him, what happens? What happens? He gets shelled. He gets rocked. And it's just, once again, man, I don't know if it's a Death Star mic. I'll give you the plays in about 45 minutes, but it's just a bad. Listen. I'm not going to panic, but the kid's not making me look good. The Phillies are in trouble. Phillies are in a little bit of what we call a slide. They haven't pitched well. They haven't hit well. And again, on the surface, they dropped 2 or 3 to Toronto. Now they'll start a 3-game set on the road against Pittsburgh, but they got swept by the Brewers. They lost. What was it? They technically won the series against the Braves, even though you had the postponement. They're not playing very good right now. They're just not. And I still believe the Phillies have to go out and get some bullpen help. I really do. I mean, are they going to go out and maybe now do they think about trying to get another frontline starter? Sanchez has pitched well. Zach Wheeler has pitched well. Aaron Nola. Everyone tell me Aaron Nola. Well, here you go, right? I mean, he's going to be shut down for a couple more games, a couple more days. I mean, you look at Aaron Nola, injured, hasn't pitched well. His ERA is right around 6.2. I mean, he's been horrible. Some starts he's not getting the run support, but it hasn't been a nice first half of the season for Nola. So the Phillies right now, they've got some issues, and the Mets can create a little bit of distance. Now, they gave up 3 in the 8th to the Dodgers last night, but they've still won 4 out of 6, 8 out of their last 10. So here you go. This was actually just sent to me. This is sent to me by Mikey B. Q, check this out on your boy Luzardo. So Philly starter Jesus Luzardo, we know that he had a horrible back-to-back outing. So apparently this is the worst back-to-back stat line in MLB history. He's coughed up, in those 2 games I gave you, he's coughed up 21 hits and 20 earned runs in 5 2/3. That was after I told you to take a flyer on him for NL Cy Young. So through the first 11 starts of him on the bump, the Phillies were great. 8-3. Kids pitched brilliantly, pitched really well. 2.15 ERA. You only given up 19, 16 of which were earned. And now, kiss of death. I don't know. I'm not going to go that far, but I obviously the run of picks they have been. I mean, it is a what the frig. Like I look at my picks, even my baseball picks, my NBA Finals picks, my Stanley Cup friggin' Game 1 plays. It's what the frig. What are we doing here? I mean, if I was like, what's his name in Two for the Money, if I was Matthew McConaughey, that would have been it. That would have been it. I'd be floating face down in the Hudson somewhere. My picks have been atrocious. They have been atrocious the past couple weeks. I can't find, like, Mush cannot pick a winner. It's so disheartening. I'm not even touching the Belmont. I'll just steer clear of some MLB picks, even though I'll give you them at 540. But the Mets are, the Mets have an opportunity, create a little space, create a little distance. And granted, we're still in the first half of the baseball season. It's a long, long season. Tampa, Toronto, they're right nipping on the Yankees' heels. Detroit is playing really well. They're leading the Central. Houston's still Houston. The Mets are 1.5. They're a game and a half up on the Phillies. The Cubs are trying to run away. If you think about these divisions right now, the largest lead in respectively in baseball divisional wise is out of the AL East. The Yanks are up 5 against the Rays. Detroit is up 6 in the standings over Minnesota. And Minnesota hasn't pitched particularly well on the road thus far this season. And then the other division, you have to go all the way down to I believe it's the Central, where the Cubs are 5 games better than St. Louis. NL West looks like it's going to be a fun division to watch. Arizona is fading fast. We know how bad Colorado is. Colorado is 12-50, but yet they have won 3 straight games. How about this for the run differential? I mean, if you're looking at, a trend with Colorado, they can't score. So if you're looking at the run line of it's 7, 8, 9, and you got a team that, comes in pretty hot, especially if you're playing in that ballpark where the ball carries. If it's right around 5, 6, 7, I'm probably going to hammer the over. Anything over 8, 9, I might steer clear because their offense stinks. They're minus 181 run differential. They're 12-50. And yet they've won 3 straight. Yet they've swept the Marlins. I mean, that's baseball. And out of those 3 games, one of them hit the over on the run line. That was the first one when they won 6-4. Robbie in Southampton chiming in on X. Q, I know yesterday you were going at it pretty hard talking about Aaron Rodgers' one-year wonder with the Pittsburgh Steelers. As a Steelers fan, I actually think he can move more than a bridge. I believe the Steelers can squeeze at least 2 to 3 years of good football out of them, which is better than 85% of the league. What say you? Yeah, no. I'm not seeing it. I don't even think Rodgers is going to last the season. I don't. I just don't. I think what you guys are banking on, if you're a Steelers fan, you guys believe, or if you're a Rodgers fan, that they can, meaning the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, can squeeze blood out of a stone here. You believe we can milk Aaron Rodgers for another 2 to 3 years. Well, remember, it's a low risk, high reward contract. It's a 1-year deal. That's what they think of Aaron Rodgers. If they believe Aaron Rodgers can give them anything more than that, it would have been a multi-year deal. Aaron Rodgers is not the same guy he was 3, 4, 5 years ago. He's not. And when you make these moves, when you sign these veteran quarterbacks, and you're hoping they can give you, that spark, that jump, they can turn back the clock. and they can take you somewhere that you've never been. And Aaron Rodgers is not going to come in, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to win 14 games. He's not throwing for 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns. He's not. He's not that guy anymore. And he hasn't been that guy for the last several years. You got to go back 2021. That was really his last great year. You're talking 4 seasons ago, 4 years ago. 37 touchdowns, 4 picks, and the offensive line did a good job. He got sacked 40 times last year. He got sacked 40 times last year. He doesn't move around like he once did. And if you want to take it a step further, and I'll just pull this up, and again, you might think this is apples and oranges, the comparison. I don't. I'll give you Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson started 11 games last year for Pittsburgh. Now, why is that? Why am I bringing this up? Because I'm talking about the offensive line. And in 11 games, he was sacked 33 times. I mean, Russell Wilson's been sacked 560 times in his career. That's wow. But he was sacked 33 times in 11 games. And he's a lot more mobile at this point of his career than Aaron Rodgers is. And he's about 5 years younger than Aaron Rodgers. If I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, the offensive line worries me. And now you bring in a veteran guy who can't move like he once could. And that to me is a recipe for disaster. That's all I'm saying. I would caution the Steelers fan to not get too high with this move. I just want it. And if you go and you look at Justin Fields, he was sacked 16 times. Now you're talking almost 50 sacks between two quarterbacks. Now, if you want to sit there and debate semantics and say, well, were they holding on to the ball? Is it all on them? Was it the offensive line's fault? Whatever. I'm just telling you that for those that believe Aaron Rodgers is going to come in and light the world on fire, this is a 1 year type of, okay, you got anything left? You got anything left? Can we compete in the AFC North? Can we compete? Can we get to 10 wins? Can we vie maybe for that second spot? Because you just know two teams are coming out of the AFC North. Baltimore and Cincinnati, you almost pencil them in, barring any type of injuries to Lamar Jackson and or Joe Burrow, respectively. They're going to win their 10, 11 games. Cleveland stinks. Lloyd thinks that Sanders is going to start week 1. Well, there's going to be a substantial amount of growing pains. You know that. All right, quick timeout. We'll wrap up hour number 1. As I mentioned, Costco at 5:05. Keep it locked in on a Friday. All right, Costco in about 5 minutes, 5:05. We'll talk some college football with him. Fast approaching the 5 o'clock hour on Friday edition Middays with Q, powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase, BYP20. Subscribe, like, and comment on the YouTube channel as well. And you can follow us on X and IG at RichQonQ, and of course on TikTok at RichQ on the mic. Let me see if I can get some more of these comments in here. Nikki over in Newcastle. A lot of Delaware faithful tuning in. Always appreciate that. Q, did you see that? Your Knicks are going to make a run for Giannis. Who do you think is going to be the next good coach? I would then turn around and say, I believe it's Jason Kidd. If you believe they're going to make a run for Giannis, I saw that, Giannis is going to be in play. And remember, too, you want a coach that has familiarity with him. I don't know what the Knicks are going to be able to do because they gave up so many draft picks. I mean, they gave up everything for Bridges. So apparently the rumor from Legion Hoops is the Knicks are preparing to make a tsunami type offer to acquire Giannis from the Bucks. All right. What are you giving up? Seriously. What are you giving up? Is Brunson going to be in that package? No. I just don't know if I don't know why you just won't try to make it work. I mean, you would probably have to give up Cat. You'll probably give up Miles McBride. You're talking first round picks, first round pick swaps. You're talking next several years. I'd have to look at it more. But you're not just, it's not a bag of balls and it's not one or two players. I mean, you're really going to leave the cupboard bare if you're the Knicks. And that also tells me that Cat's going to be on the move. But I also look at this as, well, if this is legit, if there is buzz to this, then you have to think of who would be the logical choice, right? And Jonathan even texted me this when we were going back and forth, like the theory. So if the Knicks make a run for Giannis, that tells me that they've got Jason Kidd in mind. I told you, when they fired Tom Thibodeau, you don't make that move unless you already have a plan worked out. There's some type of flirtation, wink, wink, i.e., silent type of agreement or conversation. And I believe that's the case. So if these reports, this buzz, the smoke where there's fire, that the Knicks are going to give up, everything for Giannis, well, then you got to connect the dots and you got to go with the wild theory, right? Because that's typically how it works. The more wild that becomes, it comes true. As goofy as that sounds, it comes true. So there's plenty of teams out there that want the services of Giannis. But if you believe what I believe, that the Knicks fired Thibodeau, then they already have a guy in place, and maybe it's Jason Kidd. Maybe it's Jason Kidd who's with the Dallas Mavericks, and you've got a history. So, all right, well, wait a second. You pull the trigger for Giannis, and we'll figure out a way to get me out of here in Dallas. I know crazier things have happened, but they have a good history together. So you connect the dots. I believe Tom Thibodeau was fired for a number of reasons, but I also believe, this is just me, this is not what I've been told, this is just what I've surmised, that the Knicks fired him knowing damn well who their next head coach was going to be. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to sign him, but in their mind, they said, that's going to be our guy. And now if you throw in this whole Giannis theory, and the Knicks are just going to have to give up a boatload for Giannis, and they're not going to run it back, right? I believe there's smoke, there's fire. Vince chimes in, Q, how do you feel about Mark Jackson coming home to coach your Knicks, former guard who can maybe help Brunson be less ball dominant? Mark Jackson, Love Mark Jackson as a player. I think Mark Jackson, if you think about what he has been able to do as a head coach, I think people don't give, and I believe someone commented in the other day, and I always like to give credit where credit is due. It might have been the madman. He brought up a really good point. Mark Jackson doesn't get a lot of credit for what he was able to do with Golden State. Now, he was only there for a couple seasons, but those were seasons that started to transform the franchise around, right? You teach them how to win, right? You teach them how to win. And you got to go all the way back. That was a younger team. They won 46, 47 games, 2012, 13. Curry, Thompson, Mark Jackson. Here you go, 6th seed in a Western Conference playoffs. They hadn't made the playoffs in about 10 years. They go on to defeat the Nuggets before they lose to the Spurs in the semis. That was Mark Jackson's fingerprint on that franchise, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for it. He just doesn't. He doesn't. And if you go back following year, so they signed him to a 4-year contract. And basically, he earned 2 more years guaranteed on that contract in 2013. Because at the time, I was like, man, now I'd love to see him coach the Knicks. So that following season or season after that, they won 50-plus games, the Warriors did. And they haven't done that since the run. Remember the old run TMC, right? Timmy Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, Chrissy Mullins days, 93, 94 Warriors. So they reached the playoffs in consecutive seasons for the first time since the early 90s. Again, his fingerprint was all over that franchise and that team. So they lose to the Clippers in 7 games. If you remember, people are like, man, that is a tough series. Well, they turned around, they fired him. And you know what they said at the time? The same thing, to paraphrase, that Leon Rose, Dolan, and the Knicks said, and the brass said, and the franchise said after they fired Thibodeau. We need a new coach, a better coach that we believe can take us to the NBA Finals. To paraphrase, we need a new coach that we believe can help us win a championship. And then what happens the following season? Steve Kerr. And oh, by the way, they won their first title in 40 years, and the rest, as they like to say, is history. So to answer your question, perhaps. But again, I'm not going to get, I'm not going to get too quick to that, right? No, you have to give him credit. You have to give him credit. You have to, man. Yeah, take away from Kerr. Kerr's done a great job. Absolutely, he has. But Mark Jackson never got that credit. All right, quick timeout. Costco on the other side, 60 in the book, 60 to play with. We'll take you to 6 o'clock straight up. Don't forget 5 o'clock hour from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. 2 locations right now. Brand new grand opening in Mount Laurel. And, of course, Deptford, 1450 Clements Ridge Road. Deptford, New Jersey. Open 7 days a week. Walk in. And, of course, they'll give you some best value for the buck. Purchase, use sports equipment, and more. They also take gift cards. Quickie timeout. Nick Costco joins us to talk a little college football with him coming back from the break. All right, welcome back, everyone. Couple minutes past 5 o'clock on a What the Freak Friday edition. And it's been that way. It has been that way. What the Frig Friday edition of Middays with Q. I'm your host, Rich Quinones, powered by our good friends over at TriX57, Atlantic City's premier streaming service and platform, news, weather, and sports. You can hear me Monday to Friday with Middays with Q. Also during the mornings with the TriX57 Sports Flash. It has been a minute. I feel like now the guys that were joining me, right? And then I was doing the content. We kind of took the little quick, month or so hiatus, got some things in order and gear. We had Jonathan Marshall on. Jonathan Marshall turns around and what happens? He goes and he gets married. Then he has a kid, sprouts out. Boom. Same thing right here. We got Costco, our guy, Nick Costco, who we love, who knows the gamut when it comes to college football. Not only does he get married, but rumor has it there are multiple reports. I don't know if you can confirm this or not, that a little Costco is on their way.
Yes, we can confirm due in November. So my wife will be giving birth to a baby boy in November, right around Thanksgiving, or just maybe a couple days prior to Thanksgiving. So
Hey,
yeah,
congratulations.
wild times over here in the
That's what I'm
household.
saying. You guys, I know you guys aren't even friggin' shaving. Then when you come back on the air, you guys are married, you're hitched, sprouting out kids. Here we go, doing everything you need to do. I mean, calling the games on three, Cal Athletics. I don't know, getting ready to maybe cut some more checks from Colorado, which we will get into in a moment. But it's always good to have you back on with me, brother. And I know I look forward to talking a lot of NFL and college football with you going forward. So I guess, this is kind of what I wanted to do. I want to get your thoughts. I know it's very, as we like to say, all too early
Mhm.
when you start to look at these top five, these top 10 schools as we're getting set for the upcoming season. I guess, is it safe to say we put in a roundabout way the Texases, the Ohio States, Penn State, Clemson, Georgia, and say Notre Dame, right? And then it's almost like insert a couple more.
Mhm.
But if you kind of look early, an early look, 2025 season, are those kind of the teams that you believe, okay, here are the powerhouses. These teams have an opportunity to win the championship?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I would say, Q, you look at Oregon as well. You have to throw in Alabama because naturally you would think the progression is going to be there for Kalen DeBoer in year number 2 with the Crimson Tide. So that's pretty much, I would say, how it stacks up. Now, again, we're going into year number 2 of the 12-team playoff. Now, how does that playoff factor this year? Of course, the seeding is going to be changed this year, so it'll be a straight seeding model. So no longer is it like what it was last year where the top 4 seeds, the ones who get the buys, are the 4 highest ranked conference champs. It's now just, all right, you have your auto bids. You have your 5 highest ranked conference champs get the bids, and the
Yep.
other are at large bids, but it's a straight seeding model. So in the example of a Boise State last year, they would have not gotten that buy as the number 4 team last year. They'll just be whatever they are. They could be the number 16 in the country, but if they're one of the 5 highest ranked group, 5 highest ranked conference champs, they'll be the bottom seed. Kind of how I guess what people wanted. So who knows if that actually fixes things, or because the inevitable playoff expansion's coming when it comes to 14 or 16 teams for the 26-27 campaign. But so I say all that to say that this is pretty much the same collection of teams we saw last year. Can there be another team coming out of the woodwork? Maybe. I know Tennessee's one of those teams where they're like, okay, they lose Nico Imalavia. I can't even say his name now. We'll just say Nico just got lost via a bad NIL negotiation to UCLA. They bring in Joey Aguilar, ironically from UCLA. So Tennessee's another team that I would, I guess, throw into the mix on the back half. Maybe a Texas A&M or LSU. We always look at Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, of course. Who knows what Michigan does in year 2 under Sharon Moore if they can get it right with the quarterback position. So, but the aforementioned teams that you mentioned, the Texas with Arch Manning at quarterback, Ohio State's the defending champion. Can't rule them out. Penn State is reloading and kind of running it back how Ohio State did last year. Georgia's going to be in the mix, even though they changed quarterbacks. It's still Kirby Smart at the helm. Clemson seems to be a very veteran-laden team this year as well. So those teams, to me, are certainly the ones that are going to be in the mix. It's a little bit more wide open. I think Texas is probably the favorite right now as we stand on, what's today, Friday, June 6th. We still have, I can't believe this, Q, 2+ months away from college
Yeah.
football. But Texas right now, to me, is the favorite, but it's anybody's ball game within that top 10.
Let me give you a dark horse team that I think, we might sit there and look at some of these odds and say they can potentially win 9 to 10 games,
Mm.
9 to 10 games for me. How about Oklahoma? Added some pieces in the trenches. They bring back that defense. Could that be a dark horse team in your eyes?
I'm not quite sold on Brent Venables right now, only because of what's happened through the early parts of his head coaching tenure at Oklahoma. They have to get the defense right, which is his specialty. Now he is taking, I believe, he's still taking over play calling duties for this season. So this is pretty much a make or break year, I would say, for Brent Venables. Now ESPN's FPI likes him. I think a lot of our guys at On Three also like him as well. I'm going by, again,
Sure.
we're basically, just we're throwing darts at the board right now from maybe about 100 yards out as far as who's that dark horse team right now. ESPN's FBI, which we cited the other day over at On Three, Oklahoma is within the top 20 in terms of the top 20 teams that have a chance to win the national championship, but they're slotted in at 0.7%. So basically, once you get out of the top 10, it's like, all right, everyone else is below 2%, a 2% chance to win it all. Oklahoma, to me, again, I guess you have to look at the schedule. They're gonna, it's going to be front loaded with some easy non-conference games aside from the Michigan game, but Michigan does come to Norman, so maybe they get a win right there. That'll be an interesting one. Of course, Jerome Moore not suspended for that one. Funny enough, and how they finagle that one. To me, Oklahoma, I have to wait and see. They're a wait and see approach to me. The Sooners, I do like Brent Venables as a coach, Rich, but the problem is the way that program has been run over the last couple of years, and they're not really quite clicking on all cylinders, not firing off on all cylinders. To me, it's a wait and see approach right now for Oklahoma, considering they are still in the SEC. I'm looking at their schedule. They're going to go at Tennessee late in
Hmm.
the year, November. They're going to be at Alabama, and that's going to be a big game. Missouri, I know they were, maybe they didn't really peak last year, but Missouri's a tough game. LSU is at least coming to Oklahoma this year. So, and again, Texas on the schedule every year, so that's no easy cakewalk. And we were just talking about Texas being a national title threat. So to me, it's a tough schedule. Oh yeah, at South Carolina. As much as I like to rag on South Carolina a little bit, but they're at South Carolina, so the schedule doesn't do them too many favors. So ask me again about Oklahoma when we get to, let's just say, October 18th when
October. Yeah.
they play South Carolina.
So, I always take I look ahead, right? When we start to look at the futures, especially when we do BYP back your plate. So, like
Mm,
odds, when you start to look at some of these teams and some of these conferences of teams going, say, 10 or better wins, right? Say 10 or two or better when you
mhm,
start to look at the big boys, whether we're talking SEC, Big 10, Big 12. I'm looking at the Big 10 just for today's, I guess you can say, purposes,
mhm,
for, note taking, right? So Penn State, right around 82% because of their SOS rank is 29. So think about this. It's a weak non-conference schedule,
mhm.
right? And again, Penn State, they can be on the driver's seat when you're talking about playoff qualification. Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, they're all over 60% likely to finish the regular season with two or fewer losses.
Mhm.
Can Penn State kind of be that exception to the rule where you can see this team winning 11 games? Can they go undefeated?
I could see it actually, only because again, I think the comparisons you're going to hear about Penn State this year are what Ohio State did last year, where they basically brought
Yep.
everybody back. Remember, it's like, all right, Ryan Day, Ohio State, all the seniors are coming back. That this is the make or break year, and sure enough, they still lose to Michigan. They lost to Oregon earlier in the year, but they managed to still get a playoff spot at 10-2, and then they run the table in the college football playoff. They beat Tennessee. They upset Oregon in a rematch, if you want to call it an upset on a neutral field over at the Rose Bowl. And then they got through Texas. And of course, they a very tough Notre Dame team in the national title. So they had a tremendous run to end the season. And again, if we went back to the 14 playoff, which everyone wants to play the what if game, well, if there was still a 14 playoff, they wouldn't have made it. Yes, but there was a 12 team playoff last year, and they earned it on the field with 4 straight wins. So can Penn State do that this year? Well, based on logic, getting to the semifinals last year and nearly knocking off Notre Dame in the semifinal last year and getting that rematch with Ohio State in the championship game, I could see Penn State going undefeated. The problem is James Franklin has routinely struggled with Ohio State in the regular season. Usually that's one of Penn State's bugaboos for the most part. They are at Ohio State this year on November 1st. And I'm looking, you mentioned the non-conference schedule. Yeah, they should wax Nevada, FIU, Villanova, but then they come back after a bye week. And now they are at least home for this one, but Oregon comes to town. that's the game you want to circle on the calendar first if you're Penn State. If they do beat Oregon this year, now again, Oregon might not be as loaded as last year, Q. Again, they have to go to a different quarterback, Dante Moore, after coming in from UCLA. Took a year on the bench last year behind Dylan Gabriel, who's now in the NFL. Can he get it all right? If he is as good as advertised when he was coming out of high school, now Oregon could be just as good as last year for argument's sake. But that game is is at Penn State, so that does give the Nittany Lions a bit of an advantage. They get through that one. I see no problems with UCLA, Northwestern. They are at Iowa, always a tricky game right there, but they should be able to get that one. And then you look at Ohio State right there on the schedule on the road with I believe 5 games left. But other than Oregon, Ohio State, and a tricky game against Iowa, Q, you look at Indiana is coming to town. Now,
Yep.
Indiana, did they peak last year? Probably going to still be good, but I mean, to me, you're going to favor Penn State in that game. Then they're at Michigan State, they host Nebraska, and they're at Rutgers. So the schedule to me gives them probably an 11-1 record. You're probably going to circle Ohio State or Oregon as the lone loss this year. Does that get them to a Big Ten championship game? It obviously didn't matter last year because they made the run to the playoff anyway. So you look, I should say, in a loss to Oregon anyway. They didn't win the Big Ten, and of course, they ended up making a run to the CFP semi. So, with the team they have back, Drew Aller at quarterback, both running backs are back with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. A couple guys on defense as well that are going to be high draft picks in 2026. Penn State to me is this year's Ohio State from the perspective of they're trying to run it back. And it would not shock me in the least if out of the 3-horse race between Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon, that they're the team that comes out on top. James Franklin has won the Big Ten before, so he can do it again. It's just a matter of, is this the year he gets over the hump? Is if he doesn't do it this year, Rich, where you have this amount of talent coming back
Then
compared
you
to
got to make a change.
Ohio State, who's not rebuilding, but has to retool after last year, in Oregon, where also might be in the same type of boat. If James Franklin can't do it this year, it's a matter of like, all right, is he ever going to do it?
Right. And we know about the contract and all the money, but
Mhm.
sometimes that be damned, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have to be able to get these schools over the hump. Colorado, we want to sit there and say they exceeded the expectations last year. I hate saying that. Conference record 7-2. They finished 9-4. Now you look at Colorado. Obviously, they lost 2 great players in Sanders and Hunter to the NFL draft, respectively. Their over/under win total sits at 6.5. Now ESPN's Football Power Index projects them to have right around 6.7
Yeah.
to 5. So basically, they're saying, hey, this is exactly where they're at. Now, they also have a higher chance percentage-wise, bowl eligibility, right around 74%. And we know you get to that 6-7 wins, most likely you have an opportunity for a bowl. With all that being said, they open against Georgia Tech, Delaware, Houston, Wyoming, BYU, TCU. I'm trying to find all right, where's it going to get rough for them? Now,
Yeah.
they lost several great players that we've already highlighted. Colorado, you look at Colorado right now in the Big 12. Can they win 6-7 games?
I'm going to say yes. I think they're going back to a bowl game this year. Now, I think last year was the year where we're just like, okay, if everything's going to break right, it's going to be the 2024 season because, again, it was Shadur's last season at quarterback.
Right.
Travis Hunter goes on to win the Heisman Trophy, and they have pretty much all the pieces in place they needed. But, again, they still struggled last year in certain spots where it was evident in Deion's first season at Colorado, which was namely the trenches. And that's going to be the big question again, based on everything that we've seen, that again with more roster reconstruction, the transfer portal, guys leaving, guys coming in and out, whether it's graduation, draft, transfer portal, doesn't matter. It seems like the offensive and defensive line, particularly the offensive line, that's going to be the biggest question again. Now they're going to have a new quarterback. It's going to be Caden Salter of Liberty, the Liberty transfer. He's the veteran right now. He's battling it out with their 4-star freshman, Julian Lewis, who decommitted from USC to go to Colorado. He flipped to Colorado. So that'll be an interesting quarterback battle. Is Lewis ready right away? Maybe, but it seems like Salter's the safe option right now if you want to at least say, let's try to get to a bowl game again and play another postseason game. But Georgia Tech, it's no gimme for that first week of the season on August 29th. Now, the good thing is they are going to Folsom Field, so Colorado does play that game at home. That'll help, and we've seen how Colorado gets all the rah-rah students out when it comes to these season openers in the Deion Sanders era. Of course, Delaware should be a win at Houston. A little bit tricky in the Big 12, going on the road already, but to me, that's a win for them. And then Wyoming, same thing, should be a win. And then BYU, that was their bugaboo last year in the bowl game, where it's like, okay, they fell short of getting to the Big 12 championship game, and it's like, all right, now, what was it, Colorado, BYU in the bowl game, and everyone's like, oh, this is the People's Big 12 championship,
Sure.
and BYU took it to them. Now, BYU, of course, as everybody does, roster turnover. But again, that game is in Colorado at TCU, maybe a coin toss type of game right there. Iowa State, again, the Big 12 is just so random. We do this every year, and I can't, I'm a big Utah guy, as you know, big Kyle Whittingham guy. I'm not sold on them this year either, because again, they had to deal with a lot with Cam Rising. Is he injured? Is he not injured? Is he playing? Is he not playing? The quarterback situation never really got figured out when he wasn't in there, and they didn't quite get to the expectations as they had coming into the Big 12. So to me, this season could be very random for Colorado. I see at least 6 wins, maybe 7. I think maybe the toughest games on the schedule are probably the back end right there. You have to go to West Virginia, not an easy place to play.
Nope.
Arizona State comes in. They're the defending Big 12 champs. Kenny Dillingham doing a fantastic job with the Sun Devils. Of course, they got to the college football playoff last year, then at Kansas State. And believe it or not, I mentioned before ESPN's predictions, their FBI national championship percentages. Kansas State's actually number 20 right now. Now I'm not picking Kansas State to win the national championship, Rich, but Kansas State's going to be a tough team once again this year, and that's at Kansas State. So to me, you get those 6 wins before the end of the season, because those last 3 are definitely going to be tough for the Buffaloes.
Yeah, Kansas State didn't have the best conference record, 5-4, but they did win 9 games last year. All right, let me ask you this as we close it out. And again, Costco joined us for a couple moments. We had fun talking about Belichick and UNC and all this, and waiting to sign the contract, and what's the dilly, what's the dally. June 1st comes and goes, right? So now you got that $1 million buyout. Pablo Torre, Bill Simmons, Boston guy, they're going back and forth like, bickering school children. I mean, Torre, to me, I love the reporting, but I also think it's a little borderline obsessive. But he's also reporting that, or has reported that, Mike Lombardi, the de facto GM of UNC, is deeply concerned with Belichick's relationship with his girlfriend. All that being said, right? Do you believe, when push comes to shove, Belichick will coach an entire season with UNC, or are you of the belief that before September rolls around, UNC might cut ties with him?
I still can't see it. There's too much of an investment in Bill Belichick and the rebranding, so to speak, of North Carolina as, okay, we want to, this is how serious we are about football. And not to say they weren't like that when Mac Brown did come back. And of course, Mac Brown made his bones in North Carolina, but he peaked at Texas when he won a national title and got back to another BCS title game. But Mac Brown's second act in North Carolina was never, it didn't get over the hump despite some talent at quarterback, i.e. Sam Howell. Of course, we saw Drake May there. They never really got over that hump where it's like this team maybe should have taken a few steps forward. Belichick, to me, was always the signal of, all right, we're serious about this. Now, it's something different because he's never coached in college before, but something different. Guy who's won 6 Super Bowls, a head coach, 8 overall with obviously the 2 with
let me ask you, what's the point? What's the benefit for him to go back to college? To let everyone know that he still friggin' won it?
I guess so. I mean, he wants the coaching. Clearly, the NFL didn't want him, and now obviously, you mentioned the Pablo Torre investigation piece to one Jordan Hudson. It's like, who really was the cause of Belichick not getting that job with the Atlanta Falcons? I'm sure now this is open up a new can of worms. It's like, do the Falcons not want to deal with Hudson potentially with what she's doing with North Carolina right now? That's a question people are asking. So you mentioned the obsessive report. Not to get off on a tangent here, but
that's a different animal, Nick. Not to cut you off. That's a different. You're talking. An NFL team is going to sit there and say, "We're going to be damned that your girlfriend or whomever is walking around, blah 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 blah." Right? So
which is a fair question. Which is why this is why we keep reading about it. And we want to know more about the relationship. Otherwise, if she wasn't interfering with Belichick in terms of making this a PR nightmare, I don't think anybody would have really paid any attention to this, other than the fact that Belichick just has a very, very young girlfriend. He's 50 years her senior, and they would have left it at that. But again, this has become a PR disaster over the last month and a half. It might even 2 months now at this point since that CBS interview on Sunday morning.
Yep.
When you look at what he's going to do on the football field this year, I'm still of the belief that he'll coach out the season. Will he do the entire 5-year contract? Maybe a couple months ago, I would have told you, yeah, probably, and then hand the keys over to his son. Am I a little bit, I'm not a little hesitant is the word I'm looking for. I'm hesitant now post 2025. Will he go back to the NFL? I don't know. He is getting up there in age. Now, we've seen older coaches coach in the NFL, but at a certain point, Belichick is going to be past his prime or past his time even in the NFL. Can he make a mark in college and go out on a high note? Whether it's not going to be a national champion. I can't say North Carolina's going to win a national title in the next year or two. I'm hoping they at least make a bowl games. I think they have the potential to do so with him as the head coach and putting his systems in place. But as far as him coaching the season, yes, he will coach the season. I'd be stunned otherwise. Post 2025, if we go to 2026, will he step down, hand the keys over to his son? Will he just go back to the NFL? Will he ultimately, or North Carolina ultimately wipe their hands of this mess? I don't know. To me, the only mess right now is the PR nightmare of his girlfriend, and that seems to have been, I guess, not put under wraps, but has been less talked about outside of the Pablo Torre new revelations and the Pablo Torre making a media tour with Bill Simmons. And now to me, it's now more the discussion of the reporting on Jordan Hudson rather than what she's actually doing. I think we're now past the point where, okay, she interfered with a CBS interview. She allegedly pulled the plug, was the reason why HBO pulled the plug on Hard Knocks, and she forced her way into that Super Bowl commercial back in February. I think we're past that point now, and I think she has realized maybe from this point, hey, I need to quote unquote distance myself from North Carolina football as a whole. And Belichick has said out loud himself, she has nothing to do with North Carolina football. Now, obviously, I don't fully believe that because she's in his back pocket.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The whole thing is a sham. And by the way, excuse me for a moment, Vince. I mean, I always give the listeners credit. Whatever you guys can add to the show, that's fine. I'm not sure exactly what was the question that I've asked, but I'm glad you guys are tuning in as always. Diehard Buffalo fan as well. I think it's a sham. I do. And I think eventually UNC is going to realize he's not worth the nonsense, the headache. And they thought we're going to bring him in and restore some type of credibility instantly to a college athletic program, football wise, that doesn't have a history.
Yes. I mean, I'm with you on that. And I think that was the purpose of North Carolina bringing Belichick into the program. It's like, hey, we've never had a great history. We've never won the ACC. Let's win the ACC. If Bill Belichick, won the ACC for
Right.
I don't think it's gonna be this year, obviously, but let's just say, for a hypothetical scenario, he's at North Carolina for 3 years. He wins the ACC, makes the playoff, but that's as far as it goes. Credibility has been restored to North Carolina, and it just goes to show you, because that school does have an exuberant amount of money, you can win in football at a basketball school like North Carolina within the ACC. Now, a lot can change from now until 2026, 2027.
But you believe you believe it's a short-term buzz? That's what I'm saying. Like if they went out and put all their eggs in a basket, all their chips on the table and said, we're all in for Belichick, then the idea is at least give us 3+ years. He's not going to, because once a team in the NFL, whether it's going to be, say, Cincinnati, their coach on the hot seat, whether it's going to be Indianapolis, their coach on the hot seat, hell, where it could be the Giants.
Yeah.
And he's beloved. He loves the Giants. Now all of a sudden you're hearing Dable might get fired or Taylor might get fired. And here we go. Now we're going to connect the dots. Belichick to said team. I am of the belief I would be shocked if he's on the sideline in September. I would be even more shocked if he was with North Carolina for more than one season, because I know he wants the NFL. He wants Shula's record, and he's going to wait in the weeds to see what coach is on the hot seat, and right away we're going to connect the dots. I believe he can still coach. I really do. All these reports coming out in Boston and New England, he lost his fastball, his last year or two with the New England Patriots. That might be the case, but now, again, you have a year or two to kind of recharge the batteries, and I think this is him just seeing if he still won it as a head coach. I don't believe he's going to go in there and be the Belichick that's going to say, we're on to Duke. He's not going to be that guy.
Well, let me clarify first. Are you saying you'd be stunned if he's coaching in 2026 when it comes to September? Or are you talking about this season?
If he lines up, if we're breaking down games week 1 and Belichick's locked in and here we go, then I'm going to say I'll give him the season. Besides that, I refuse to give him more than one season because of the NFL. Yeah, and the NFL. He
which is
wants to break Don Shula's.
Rich. That is fair
Yeah,
to give him, but to me, the whole conversation when it came to Bill Belichick, where it's like he's not going to coach in 2025, he's not going to coach one game for North Carolina. That whole narrative to me was always nonsense. And then everyone always, everyone wanted to cite it always comes back to money, which is fair, and most of the time is true.
it's all
But
about money.
everyone wanted to cite that June 1st deadline, or that June 1st date, where it was his buyout drops from
That
10
was that was
to
me.
1 million.
Went on the air and said it. That was me.
So when it came to that buyout, to me, it was like, okay, he can get out of his contract. He only has to pay back $1 million. Where's he going to go? There's no job open. That date always made no sense to me, barring an unforeseen disaster where an NFL franchise fires their head coach but right before training camp.
But
We
what
rarely
could
ever
you
see that.
hold on a second? June 1st comes and he's got that buyout. What if North Carolina just said enough is enough? We don't want this headache. So you have to still the devil's in the details. You have to put a deadline. You have to put that in that contract because that's also giving UNC an out.
But people were saying that before all this nonsense with his girlfriend, which is why that narrative never made sense to me. Now, again, because what North Carolina has already invested into, again, rebranding the
The
football image
program,
with Bill
sure.
Belichick, to me, they're not going to cut ties before the season. They need to see this play out, because
Yeah.
if they, let's just say they shoot him off to the side and they don't even give it a chance to play out on the field, who knows what that does to damage the school's reputation
That's a
in
fair
the football
point.
program.
That's a fair right. Because
And again, if that hypothetical scenario actually did happen, let's just say 5 days ago, North Carolina's like, you know what, Bill, just pay us back the $1 million and just get out of here, okay?
sure,
Which
with
is
some
fine.
pocket change.
Let's just say that happened. How do you view North Carolina football? Yeah, they got rid of a PR disaster that happened
Yeah.
2 months ago and has seemingly not died down, but it's been quieter as of late, and it's been back towards, okay, let's focus back on football. Who wants to coach there? It's already a program in the ACC, which is run by Clemson, Miami, Florida
Yeah.
State when they're good. North Carolina's a basketball school. Heck, Duke has been better at football in some
True.
spots than North Carolina in football,
But I'll
and
tell you
those are
this,
two basketball schools.
if they open up the season, they beat TCU, they go on the road and beat Charlotte, come back and wax Richmond, and they're 3-0. Guess what? It's going to be like, it's the hoodie talk, like we were talking about Deion Sanders with Colorado. I mean,
Which
that's,
is which is
here we go.
yeah,
Belichick's
right,
back.
right.
Everywhere he goes, he wins.
Exactly, which is exactly my point. You let that play out, but and again, it is actually funny that TCU is the opener. And I think Sonny Dykes was asked about this before too. He was just like, how does it feel? Or he had a comment about it, and I'm paraphrasing here. It was something along the lines of, well, yeah, of course, we had Deion one year, and now we got Bill. It's like, hey, can we get like a different game to open up the season where all eyes aren't on us for the for week one of the college football season? It was Deion's first game at Colorado. Now it's Bill's first game at North Carolina, and I'll tell you right now, it will have the same impact. Now, again, Deion Sanders, Coach prime time, totally, the polar opposite of Belichick when it comes to
Yeah.
the flash and the on-camera presence. But deep down, we know how similar Deion is to Nick Saban when it comes to
I can
his
say this:
coaching philosophy.
we're not going to do a spot once Colorado beats TCU, and I'm dubbing it, or Belichick beats TCU, and say Belichick's scaring the shit out of college football, and all of a sudden it picks up about 50,000, goes
No,
viral.
well, I would say
When we get it on that Sunday or Saturday right
we
after.
could absolutely do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, I'll be here. I'll be here for that. Bill Belichick
Um,
and North Carolina beat TCU that first game. They're 1-0. Guess what's leading Get Up and First Take? We know how the formula.
Yeah, of
Rich,
course.
come on.
Of course, right? Costco joined us for a couple moments. Give him a follow at Nick Costco. 59 does a great job covering all the gamut college sports, all three sports, play-by-play as well. Are you wrestling, Cal Athletics? I want to get to this question from Vince. Who do you see as the next hot college coach that goes pro? Matt Rule, Lincoln
That
Riley.
goes pro. I don't know if Matt Rule would go back to the NFL. I think he was an unmitigated disaster, it seems like, in Carolina. I think he's got a good right now in Nebraska, and there's enough expectations for the Huskers to get back to the glory days of Nebraska, which is what we're a quarter century away from there since then.
And 95, right? The Tommy
Yeah,
Frazier.
right. So it's about more than that. Yeah, so 30 years. But to me, Matt Rule, excellent college football head coach. Wasn't good in the NFL. I think the Lincoln Riley NFL buzz will always be there, but to me, it's died down a little bit only because the success at USC hasn't really happened. Remember, it was Caleb Williams won the Heisman at USC during his first year with the Trojans after he took him from Oklahoma, but they ultimately got waxed by Utah because Utah just out-physicaled them, and then they lost to Tulane in the bowl game, and then all of a sudden USC starts to take a little bit of a dip, and I think the Lincoln Riley shine has worn off a little bit when it comes to the NFL. Now, I'm not going to say that rules out anything, but an NFL team could still say, hey, we love your offensive philosophy. Come to the NFL where it's all about the X's and the O's, separating the Jimmies from the Joes, to use an old expression, and we'll take care of the salary cap, in the front office. You don't have to do that over at USC where you're worrying about the portal and, of course, high school recruiting and NIL. Come to the NFL. I'm never going to rule that out. So,
how about Kirk Smart, Day, Fisher?
I'm not going to say Kirby Smart. I think Kirby Smart is too much of a good thing going to Georgia. I think he's in that Nick Saban mold where college suits him better. Ryan Day is always an interesting name to me, and I can't really say that now that he won the national championship, you can look at it from one of two ways. He finally won a national title at Ohio State, so now the monkey's off his back, a la Steve Young. Pressure's off now at Ohio State for the most part, except you still have to beat Michigan. He hasn't beaten Michigan in a while. Could Ryan Day make the jump to the NFL? Now, one could say, well, he's won a national title.
And he's cultivated a lot of talent that
right. And now all that talent, we saw this year, all that talent go to the NFL in this past draft. So maybe the next challenge is to go back to the NFL, but this time as a head coach. For Eagle fans, remember, he was the quarterback's coach when Chip Kelly was the Eagles head coach in 2015. Now, could he go back to the NFL? Maybe. But then on the other hand, you could say, well, all the pressure's off at Ohio State. Now he's already won a title. Now it's all about, can you win two? Can you surpass the guy who was just before you, Urban Meyer, one of your mentors? Can you become a better all-time coach than one of your mentors? I think that might appeal to him. Obviously, he loves Ohio State. He's been there, since coaching under Urban Meyer. We've seen him progress. So I think you could look at it from one of two ways, where he wants to embrace a new challenge, and that does mean the NFL, or it's like, hey, establish yourself as an all-time college football head coach. You've already won a national title. You're one of the more now revered head coaches in college football because you finally won that title. So pressure's off a little bit, and maybe he'll ride that momentum for a little while.
Good comment by the madman. Not sure if any tenured college coaches would work in the NFL. Most of the successful coaches in the league now are homegrown entry-level coaches, 25 years old, that worked their way up. Yeah, some of those guys we're talking about, they've been around the block, so to speak. They've been around the block. But, it is a young man's game to some extent. And, you want these guys to get 3 to 5, maybe to 7 seasons under their belt on the sidelines in the pros. And then by the time they're 33, 34, 35, we're talking about, hey, the McVays, right? That young, that young mind with an opportunity to go to the NFL.
Unfortunately, Rich, we've seen it too often where these really good college coaches just don't translate to the NFL. Obviously, Nick Saban really couldn't translate. Of course, I think he hit more of his college coaching peak after he came back, and obviously the run at Alabama is an all-time run. Urban Meyer, again, big time disaster with the Jaguars, couldn't even last the entire season. And then I think that,
but it's different from years ago, right? Because think about it. Not to interrupt you, like Lou Holtz had a great run and then tried to go with the Jets, didn't work, and then came back Notre Dame. You look at guys like Pete Carroll. That's maybe your.
To me, that's one of the few exceptions. At least in the last 25 years, it is Pete Carroll.
Right?
Who's that again? I'm sorry.
Chip Kelly, right? I'm saying successful, then and then back, right?
Yeah.
And Pete Carroll, I think, is kind of the outlier, right? The exception to the rule. I'm trying to think.
I feel like NFL franchises want to try to find the Pete Carroll type. Now, again, he was more seasoned because he was in the NFL with the Patriots and had some success. Then, of course, dipped. The Patriots, Jets, all that good stuff. But then he has that career resurrection at USC where takes off, and of course, but again, he did leave amid a
we know why he left.
Back then a recruiting scandal, which wouldn't even count at this point. And then, but again, he's probably one of the lone exceptions of the last 25 plus years where it's
some of these guys
he was able to capture that magic in Seattle, got the 2 Super Bowls, won a title, and now he's trying to run it back with Vegas. But notice how he didn't come back to college. Once he found that success in the NFL, he stayed in the NFL. Maybe outdid his welcome in Seattle, but now we'll see what he does in Vegas. But to me, guys, like if a guy like Ryan Day, who does have NFL experience as an assistant coach, at least, if he went to the NFL, is he one of these guys where if he flames out in 3 years, let's just say, I'll use your Giants as an example, That's a job where if he's successful there, he's there for a long time.
Of course he is.
Or if he flames out, the Giants are going to clean house again, and then does he go back to college, or does he try to say, you know what, maybe I'll go the coordinator around the NFL and not deal with an ever-changing college landscape? So it is different here, where I think we've seen now coaches from college, and we've seen in the past couple of years, Jeff Hafley comes to mind first, leaves a head coaching job at Boston College last year, and now he's the defensive coordinator with the Packers, and it seems like maybe he's better off because he's not leading a franchise, but he's also not leading a college franchise at this point where we have to deal with the same nonsense, but with extra guardrails.
I equate the Belichick move. I think the apples and apples comparison is Bill Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bill Walsh coached the 49ers
Mm-hmm.
79 to 88. You know, he went out on top. He won a championship. Musburger said, "Is this your last game as head coach?" He got choked up. Then a couple years later, he was 61, 62 years of age, and he coached at Stanford for a couple seasons. So it's like you're talking about a Hall of Fame coach. You know, also that was part of that. You know, again, he was president, GM, vice president. You know, he was the 49ers, right? The architect of those championship teams. You know, the father of the West Coast offense, so to speak. But he won Super Bowls, and then he went back to college. But obviously, he didn't turn around and go back to the pros. I believe even if Belichick plays out the season, they win a couple games. Mm-hmm. Once a head coach gets fired, and it's Black Monday.
Yep, I agree with you.
It's too logical. It's too easy, right? Connect the dots. It's going to be, here we go.
Again, I do like your Bill Walsh comparison. I think the only difference is I think he had that college pull only because he was at Stanford first. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like he was there first, and then it's interesting because when he was out of coaching for what 4 or 5 years between the Niners and his second season.
So 88, and then he went back in 92, and
right. He won 10 games. He was instantly successful.
And he was a defensive backs coach. He started his career. He was a high school football coach. Then he was a receivers and a backs coach. Then he was ultimately with Stanford, and then obviously he bounced around a little bit. You know, was with Cincinnati, the Chargers coordinator, and then he took the 49ers job in 79.
Right. I don't want to be too hot takey here, but like, if you're going to make that Bill Walsh comparison, could you see? I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question in my own head here, but could you even see Bill Belichick if somehow the systems work in North Carolina, everything kind of breaks right? We know college football can always be funky. The ACC, for how I guess better it was last year, could always go nuts. And could North Carolina all of a sudden, hey, they sneak into the ACC championship game? Maybe upset Clemson or Miami or somebody in the title game.
I think anything's possible
and they're
now
because
of the NIL and the transfer portal.
Go back to the NFL.
Yeah, but everything's possible now because the NIL deals in the transfer portal. Of course it is. You know, you get that ringer. You get a bunch of players. Oh, man, I want to play for Belichick. I mean, think about it. How many guys were salivating at the thought of playing for Deion Sanders?
The name attracts everything to me. I think
exactly.
I think that's why,
and your point's a really good one.
There was always buzz. Yes.
Yeah. If he does that, then it's like that second arc. Oh man, the hoodie can still coach.
Yeah.
He can bring him in for 3. Give him GM. Give him the duties. Hell, if he wants to bring in Lombardi as buddy, so be it. And here you go.
And ultimately, you know, I guess I'll leave it on this, which is I'm fascinated to see if they are highly successful this year. Now, successful to me at North Carolina for year one could be just a bowl game. They can go 6-6 and go play in the Bahamas Bowl or something, and then go win that and finish 7-6. Right. Is that enough to generate NFL buzz? It might be. And now my question is, what is the offer from an NFL franchise? But, you know, there's going to be, 3 to 7 openings for 2026 in the NFL.
It's got to be. With the caveat,
what is the offer to Belichick? Is it like, we want you to turn back the clock to coach and GM Patriot days, or are they going to say, we need you to coach here because you still have it, but you have to work with this GM?
He won't do that,
right? And I think that's where they butted heads in Atlanta as well, where I think he wanted total control.
Sure.
Now, Jordan Hudson aside, I think that's where they butted heads in Atlanta, and why it didn't ultimately work out, and why he was left on the sideline for a year before ultimately coming to coach in college. And if that's the case, Q, I think that's where you're like, okay, well, another college is not going to come knocking on the door for Bill Belichick. He's going to stay in North Carolina, where he has a little bit of family history, I guess. And then you look at year 2 in 2026, you see the success early on. Maybe it builds from there. Or, again, like Bill Walsh, you have one good year, and then it kind of flames out, but you're at the end of your tenure, or the end of your coaching career. So it'll be a fascinating
He's
situation to see it play out.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on your final comment, he'd get that control with the Giants
Yeah,
because
I
they
agree. You
think
would.
so highly of Bill Belichick. Where open the checkbook, you want total autonomy, GM. Here you go.
Yep.
Get yourself a quarterback. Um, and then there's other teams. Let's just say a Cincinnati that already has an all-world quarterback in Joe Burrow. Right now, you're
Right.
coming into a situation where they're not as they're a little cheaper of a franchise, Cincinnati is, than say the Giants. Well, they're a very cheap franchise. But again, the the adoration that Belichick has for the Giants, it's just it's the worst kept secret in the NFL. He want That's his. At the end of the day, if you gave him true serum and backed him in a corner, that's the job he wants, and it could become a reality. But
Yeah, it
as
could.
you mentioned, it'll be interesting. They win a couple games early on. The buzz is there, and then of course UNC is going to be like, we don't care what the hell your girlfriend's doing as long as you're winning.
Yeah, here's a blank check. Do whatever you want.
Correct. All right, brother. You're not. I mean, we got anything high school action wise this weekend?
No,
Everything's
we are resuming our Cal 101 podcast series, previewing the 2025 high school
nice.
season, which is, again, what I say before, it's June 6th. Football's around
Yeah.
the corner. It's, seems so far away, but it's right around the corner. So already have our first episode of the season up on our YouTube channel on Cape Atlantic Live. You can find that on YouTube with Atlantic City head coach Keenan Wright. They're looking to get back to the sectional finals. They made a nice run last year. And then tonight's episode will premiere at 7 o'clock tonight with Holy Spirit head coach Andrew DePasquale. They Holy Spirit made a nice playoff run last year as well. Won 10 games, looking to run it back this year. And throughout the coming weeks and the coming months leading up into August, of course, we'll have all those local coaches on for some football previews leading into the Chuck Smith show with Mainland as well, covering them a lot again this year. And then before we know it, Q, it's going to be middle of high school football season. You're going to be asking me about Rutgers wrestling at some point.
We can save it for October, November. All right,
November.
brother. Yeah, all right, November. Outstanding stuff as always. Appreciate you jumping on board. Nick Costco, give him a follow on X at Nick Costco 59. We'll do it again real soon. Thank you, pal.
Appreciate it, Rich. Good stuff.
All right, you too, brother. All right, quick timeout. We'll close things out. All right, a couple minutes to play with before we get out of here on a Friday. Excellent stuff from Costco. Always appreciate him jumping on board. Apparently, I owe percentages over here. Let's see. Whoa. Diabolical. This is diabolical. We're going on a What the Freak Friday, Vince. We're going diabolical, hypothetical for me. Hold on. Should I read this question first of all? Hold on. Let me pull back. Let me pull back. Should I read this question on the air? Because I thought we made it clear that there will be no Steelers related questions from those that are not Steeler fans. Or do I give Vince a little charity? Is he looking for a little charity on this Friday? You know what? Let's give him a little charity. Let's kind of pull back the curtain, see what the question is. Diabolical, hypothetical. Tomlin has first losing season, gets fired. Billy B, we call him the hoodie. Billy B makes ACC championship game and loses, but he has a good showing. Does Steelers hire Bill and drive away the two fans left? Well, can I add to that question? Tomlin has a losing season. They go 8-9. They were 8-3 at one point, and Rodgers played well, but they still fired Tomlin. Do you think the hoodie wants Aaron Rodgers for a season? And do you think Aaron Rodgers wants the hoodie for a season? Like, that's a combustible scenario. Is it not? It's a great question. It really is. And we love hypotheticals because you got to talk about them a lot, whether it's sports or in life. I mean, that's daily topic and conversations. It really is. I think Tomlin and the Steelers are in for a long season. And I told you, I gave you my thoughts on Aaron Rodgers. I think it's going to be a failed experiment. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think he's going to beat up behind that line, and the AFC North is a juggernaut. If they move on from Tomlin, that would be a very, 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 very surprising move because now we're saying we're getting rid of you after one losing season, after what, 16, 17 of winning. Rodgers and the girlfriend have to go. It's a perfect match. All right. Let me give you the picks, which, as I alluded to, have just been not good. Not good. Oh, my question of the day for you guys, I got a lot of comments on X and Facebook. NBA Finals gentlemen sweep after what transpired last night. I still like OKC in 5. All right, I got to go back. Got to go back to the drawing board. Stanley Cup Finals. Obviously, game 2. The total for goals, 6.5. I mean, we saw 7 the other day, 4-3. Edmonton wins it in overtime. So I'm going to take the over on that one. MLB, the Mets, 10.5 over the Rockies. As much as I told you guys, look at the Rockies and their offense. The Mets offense has been on fire. The Rockies have won 3 straight. I think the ball's going to travel in that ballpark. I'm going to play the run line over 10.5. And then NBA Finals. There's no way OKC loses game 2. None. I like them 10.5. I think they smack the Pacers. I believe that was a Allen Iverson stepping over Tyronn Lue. That was a Sam Perkins, the big smooth with a 3 to beat the Bulls in 91. And then both those teams, that Bulls team and that Lakers team, ran roughshod over their opponents. I mean, that was the gentleman's sweep. Sixers never stood a chance. The Lakers never stood a chance. I don't, for the life of me, how do you turn the basketball over 6 times and you lose a game? It's unheard of. In the NBA, in today's NBA, you turn the ball over just 6 times and you lose? Pish posh. That's brutal. Absolutely brutal. No, there's no excuse for that. Let me see. Franchise chimes in. Q, I'm surprised you haven't really talked a lot about your Knicks and Giannis. You believe that's going to be a match made in heaven? Do you believe they're going to go after Jason Kidd as well? I had to decipher that from your typing, but we can talk more about that next week. Giannis is going to be sought after. You know it, and I know it. And I, was playing connect the dots. That's all. Hoops, my guy Hoops on X just sent me this. It's pretty cool. So you're talking about the Pacers. They were down 108-92 to the Knicks with 7:22 to go. They won. They were down 94-79 against OKC. They won. They were down 112-106 overtime with a $1:45 to go against Milwaukee. They won. They were down against Cleveland 117-110 with a $1:06 to go in the 4th. They won. Listen, they are the cardiac kids. I don't know what else to say. They are the cardiac kids. They find a way to win games. And Haliburton finds a way to just rip the heart. That shot in game 1, if we talk about the most improbable runs over the last 15, 20 years in sports, it's kind of where we started the show with, if you guys are just tuning in. If you go to that Haliburton shot, that to me, if the Pacers go on and win the NBA championship, that shot will live in, folklore and Pacers history. Now, granted, it was a 2 to tie it to get it into overtime in a game that they won, which they had no business. But the domino effect after that, the games against Cleveland, the domino effects, the Knicks series, and now game 1. Yeah, I agree. I think by this time next week, I mean, OKC has to figure it out. They have to figure. They're too good of a team. They're two. You want to stub your toe, you stub your toe. You have a defensive lapse, you have a defensive lapse. It happens. You know that Halliburton's going to be that guy late. And they shot really well from beyond the arc. You know, the Pacers, the pace, that's kind of what they do. They live and die by those 3-point shots, and they want to get at least to 115, 120. They got 111 last night. And the last bucket took the lead was with 0.3 seconds to go. I think OKC comes back Sunday and they hammer them by at least, they're going to cover the number. If they don't and they fall behind 2-0, they are in serious trouble. And if the Pacers were to go on and win the series, that's when you start to say, okay, over the last 25, 30 years, this has been or this is one of the most improbable runs in NBA history because nobody saw this coming. You're talking about a Thunder team that won 68 games and a Pacers team that won 50 games. And if you put it in perspective, 50 games, you're like, hey, that's a pretty solid season. Well, Cleveland won 64, 65. They were 14, 15 games back in the Central. The Pacers have no business being in the NBA Finals right now. They don't, but you have to give them credit. They beat the Bucks, they beat Cleveland, they beat the Knicks, and they came from behind all those games. And that's where credit is. OKC, Hot Wax Game 3. Everyone started questioning them. Games 4 and 5 versus Minnesota were cakewalks. Yep. And that's when you kind of, okay, enough playing around. Enough playing around. OKC is the better team. They're deeper, they're more talented, and they had the league's MVP. And you're right, they dog walked Minnesota those last two games. Well, the one game they won by 2, but that last game they beat them by what, 30 points? Wasn't even competitive. Not even close. Same thing with that closeout game versus Denver. They nugged by 32. They beat the Nuggets. All right, got to start wrapping up. By the way, we're going to start launching back again with Back Your Play. We'll start doing that next week. Back on the air Monday to Friday. We might do a Saturday edition of Middays with Cube and Yana. We are still trying to track down a couple of baseball writers for next week. We're going to start really getting into some football. Good stuff with Costco on college football as well. But we'll continue to preview what's going on with the NBA Finals and the recap. And, of course, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals tonight. I already told you I like Florida tonight. There's just no buzz. There really isn't. I mean, Panthers got to go on the road. They can ill afford to go down 2-0 in the series. I hate the spacing too, because you have a travel day and now it's 2, and I think Game 3 is not set until Monday. I know you don't want to mix and match with the NBA Finals and the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, but I was never a fan. Remember when it was like 2-3-2 and you had one day of travel and then you're right back there and back-to-backs? They don't do that anymore. Also, be out the lookout for another gambling show that we're just testing the waters with. That'll be on an entirely different platform and channel. So we'll give you some updates on that. But as always, we'll be back in the saddle Monday to Friday. We have been powered by our good friends over at TriX57. Also, Play It Again Sports and Fresh Roasted Coffee, 20% off your first purchase, BYP20. Check out the show notes. And we always encourage you guys to get social with me on X and IG at RichQ1Q, TikTok, RichQ on the mic. Special thanks to Nick Coxco for joining us. Little college football, talking Colorado, talking some of these win percentages, top 5 to 10 teams, a early look ahead, and he really gave some interesting insight on Belichick. If you guys like the content, like, comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel as well at Rich Quinones. Have a wonderful Sports Friday for everyone tuning in. Always appreciate you guys hanging with me for 2 hours. You guys are absolutely beast. Always appreciate the engagement and the comments. Next Monday, I will try to pronounce former players' names a little more better. I promise you. I'll work on the other names that you guys gave me as well. As always, I'm Rich Quinones. Have a good Sports Friday. Enjoy your weekend. If you're driving around, be safe, be sound. Don't text and drive. Wear your seatbelt. Even if you have a couple pops, get a designated driver. But just be very careful out there. Summer's right around the corner. We know how goofballs are out there. But have a good sports weekend. We will talk to you on Monday at 4 o'clock. You can check me out early on TriX57 Sports Flashes on their Facebook page. Until then, I'm Rich Quinones. Hasta luego, buen día.